Well, mining sector representatives went on the counter-attack today after a new report found Australia's mining industry was largely foreign-owned. The report, commissioned by the Greens, who will have the balance of power in the Senate on Friday, warned that foreign investors were set to rake in $50 billion from the mining sector over the next 5 years. The document triggered a chorus of criticism, with some accusing the Greens of acting against the national interest and xenophobia. Here's finance correspondent Philip Lasker.
The Greens report received the predictable mining sector rave reviews.
This is a pretty crude attempt to capitalise on the politics of xenophobia.
The report found that about 83% of Australia's mining industry was foreign-owned, including the big Australian BHP Billiton. It had some calling for a foreign ownership register.
It's worthwhile knowing who owns the resources in Australia, whether they're mining resources or farming resources.
The report also maintained that the original super profits tax wouldn't have deterred investment because of the high mining industry profit margins of 31%, that at current extraction rates, iron ore resources will be depleted by 2036, and that of the $260-odd billion made by foreign investors in Australia, $50 billion will be sent offshore.
It's where the economic activity is that's really important. Companies are investing something in the order of 98% of the revenues that they're generating back here in Australia.
And a Citigroup report illustrates why the mining tax is such a hot issue, because Australia leads the world in its potential for greenfield project growth, accounting for nearly 40% of all growth. The Resources Minister, Martin Ferguson, wasn't about to scare foreign investors by supporting Bob Brown. He accused the Greens leader of hypocrisy instead.
The major political parties in Australia understand their responsibilities to actually attract foreign investment. It's been good for Australia, and I simply say to Bob, if it's good enough for renewable energy companies from overseas to invest in Australia, then it's good enough for them to also invest in LNG, coal, nickel, copper, uranium or whatever. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
Miner Andrew Forrest, who missed out on concessions under the revamped mining tax, certainly knows that. He was one of the businessmen lining up to reject the Greens' approach.
If we didn't have that offshore capital, we couldn't develop Australian projects at all. And I think what Mr Brown needs to do is to not support a tax which will exacerbate that situation and shift Australian ownership in developing projects offshore because they can no longer afford to compete.
I don't think we have any strategic